Hi, I'd like to introduce you to the best mother-in-law stories. Story 1. My mother-in-law, and a couple of other people went on vacation to kayak for a swim. My mother-in-law, a master of sports, was a physically developed and strong woman. There was plenty of time, so I decided to learn how to sail the boat. My mother-in-law gladly agreed to help me. One day, leafing through the family album, I saw her photos of her youth. She was stunningly beautiful, with a figure that words cannot describe. I was amazed by her flat belly, slender legs, shapely arms, and firm breasts. I couldn't tear myself away from the photos, and could barely contain myself not to give away my admiration. Fortunately, my wife did not notice it. Now mother-in-law is fine too, although a bit swollen. I've always admired athletic women. I try to get to know everyone I meet, and I have a long list of victories. The only one I missed was my wife's mom. I asked her to teach me how to paddle a kayak, and we made an appointment. She brought the necessary gear and had me put on a life jacket. I obediently followed all her instructions. We got into the boat, and Tesha began teaching me how to row. She was very patient and attentive, and I quickly learned how to steer the kayak. We spent several hours on the river, floating and enjoying nature. I was very grateful to her for teaching me this new skill, and I was very happy to have met such a wonderful woman. I enjoyed working with her. She was a trainer, and trainers love to be obeyed. I obeyed all her commands like a faithful dog, and I avidly studied her movements. I took advantage of every minute I had with her. She didn't notice it, sitting opposite me in the kayak and showing me how to work the paddles, how to rake in the water and turn the kayak. I pretended that I wasn't thinking straight, just so she would stay with me longer. We had no other reason to meet. She was rarely in our house, and she had her own things to do. I watched how confidently Mama raked the oars and imagined what she could be in other struggles, not only sports. My imagination played out, and I sweated a little, and not only from the load. When we docked at the shore and started to get out of the kayak, I accidentally snagged on the side and collapsed right on top of it. I was confused by my slip, but managed to grab onto her. She supported me, preventing me from falling into the water. She only laughed at my awkwardness. That moment broke the awkward silence, and I was able to get out of the boat. I looked at mother-in-law, not believing that I had been able to touch her. Albeit not where I wanted it, but it felt good too. If I could, I would never let her go. But she didn't understand anything, just looked questioningly. "Why are you staring at me?" That day, we said goodbye, agreeing to go rafting on the river the next day. At night, I slept badly, thinking about how I could get her. My wife slept beside me, unaware of my thoughts. I thought about her for a long time, and soon I realized I was in love. I wanted to spend more time with her, to get to know her better. But I also realized that she wasn't free, and that she had a husband. I decided that I would just enjoy her company and not try to get more from her. We continued dating and rafting down the river. I still admired her beauty and grace, and I still dreamed of her. But I also realized that our connection couldn't last forever. Eventually, we both had to return to our normal lives. And then one day she told me that it was time for her to leave. I was saddened, but realized it was inevitable. We said goodbye, and I never saw her again. But the memory of her remains in my heart forever. I will never forget those happy days we spent together. What a strange situation has happened to my wife. She is not at all like her mother. You can't say it's her own daughter. I woke up, ate breakfast, packed my bag, put it on my shoulder, and walked out of the house. I walked, whistling. My mood was great, though there was a slight worry inside me. But I didn't pay attention to it. It didn't bother me. We gathered on the shore, put on our life jackets, and jumped into the kayak. Again, my mother-in-law took the seat in front of me and wouldn't let anyone else get in, even though there were those who wanted to. I looked at her angrily, and they left at once. We started rafting along the shore. Everything was going fine. I was admiring my mother-in-law instead of watching the paddles. I was looking at her back and at her confident movements. A wave of shivers ran through my body. I wanted so badly to break the barrier and hug her tightly. And here was my chance. Suddenly, the kayak flipped over and caught on a bow. We all fell into the water, but no one panicked because we had life jackets. Well, the shore wasn't far from us, only a 5-minute swim, so I ventured over to my mother-in-law and clung to her. She asked me if I knew how to swim. I replied that of course I could, but I hadn't swam in a long time and had lost my skills. Then she suggested I hold on to her, and we started paddling toward shore. I was so happy. Now I could grab onto anything. I hugged my mother-in-law, realizing that we didn't have much time and would soon make it to shore. The group we came in with was left behind. Eventually, it was just me and my mother-in-law left in the water. I was grabbing her so vigorously in various places that she started breathing heavily, and so did I. I tried not to be cheeky and prevent her from swimming, just touching her underwater. We stealthily swam to the shore and found ourselves in a thick thicket of reeds. And then it began. I did not even expect such a development of events, hoping for something less. My mother-in-law took off her vest, and I did the same. We went into a passionate animal excitement and pounced on each other. Of course, we were wet. All the grass stuck to our bodies, but the sensation was amazing and no one noticed us. Then we put our clothes back on, got ashore, and went looking for our friends. We cleaned up our kayak gear and got ready to go home. When I got home, I was wet to my underwear, but very cheerful and alert. My wife asked me if I had flipped over. I answered her that I had. I answered so cheerfully that she looked at me like I was an idiot. She asked me if I enjoyed swimming, and I sincerely replied that I did. I really enjoyed it and would repeat it every day. She started asking me questions about the details, and I started telling her. Then she started swearing about her mother, saying she was not ashamed to do such nonsense with men. I couldn't help myself and laughed. This caused a small argument between us. I realized she was jealous of her mother for me. Let her be jealous. It's not like I'm doing anything. As they say, I went into the shower to rinse off the river water. My wife went into the bathroom. Something she needed there always comes in without asking. Look, and my back scratched. I didn't notice it in the heat of passion. Who scratched you like that? Interested and points a finger at my back. I answered that I got caught on a snag when I jumped from the kayak into the water. What a strange snag you got, she began to lament. You probably have a mistress. What kind of mistress? There are only men in the group. My wife thought about it. It's true, there are no women in our group, except for my mom. She didn't think about her, of course. Mother-in-law was beyond suspicion. If my wife knew how wrong she was. But I made honest eyes at her, asking her to get out of the bathroom. The wife walked out unhappily. I looked in the mirror, twisted around, and sure enough, my entire back was humanized with fingernails. Long, deep stripes. You could tell a woman's hand had done the work. What a surprise! She's the one who gave her daughter the message. Well, he's a man on the prowl, your husband. But then why didn't she deny herself the pleasure? I don't understand anything about women. And I never will. Except for the fact that they're very devious. They can do such things. Why did my mother-in-law scratch me? I thought she couldn't handle herself out of passion. We had a lot of fun in the reeds. I'd like to do it again, but how? I thought I'd ask to join the group again, in case she doesn't refuse. Immediately, without putting things off in a long box, sent her a message on her phone. Is there an open spot in the group? My mother-in-law replied in a minute. There's always room for you. I fell off my chair with joy. Such trips on kayaks, my mother-in-law and I had been going on for a long time, which I was very happy about. After all, such passion could give me only a woman like mother-in-law. Her daughter is not like her mother, boring and like a board in bed. Story 2. This story took place in my beloved city of Dallas. I finally decided to ask my future wife's hand in marriage to her parents, and to receive a blessing. Now I think of it, and my heart is pounding with the pleasant events of the past. Her father first gave his consent, blessing the union modestly and glancing at her mother. The mother agreed, adding, I give my consent, and you take it and remember that you are bound to love. Then only I noticed the charm of her mother. Her name was Emily, who, being the head of the family at the age of 42, was astonishing in her exquisite beauty, refinement, and appeal. It seemed that any man was captivated by her. Even I could not hide my admiration. Victoria, her daughter, was just like her mother, like two sisters, only with an age difference. After the wedding and the honeymoon, my mother-in-law began to take care of me as if I were her son, which puzzled me. On top of that, I couldn't help but notice my mother-in-law's ambiguous looks. Sometimes, during family dinners, she would put her hand on my knee, instructing me on how I should raise her daughter. On holidays, not drinking much whiskey, my father-in-law would often apologize to me, saying that he could not keep his innocent daughter safe from me. Gradually, I began to trust my mother-in-law, considering her my equal. She tried to start conversations about my intimate relations with Victoria, but I was always embarrassed and avoided the subject. After a couple of years, we got used to each other, and I felt like a full-fledged member of their family. But one day, when my father-in-law was drunk again, he told me the shocking truth. It turns out that 10 years ago, in their family there was a tragedy. Their eldest daughter died in a car accident. She was traveling with a friend to Las Vegas, and their car was hit by a truck. And Victoria, her younger sister, was born later. She was carried by a surrogate mother and biologically related to me. These revelations made me look at my mother-in-law in a new way. I now understood her ambiguous behavior and secret views. Having lost one daughter, she was afraid of losing the second one, seeing me as a threat to her happiness. Although even after these revelations, our relationship with my mother-in-law remained friendly and warm, I always remembered the day I learned the truth. One day, when we were alone in a hotel room, I accidentally wandered into the bathroom and bumped into my mother-in-law. She was not embarrassed in the slightest, smiled and calmly asked me to wipe her back. You see, seeing your wife's mother in front of you in that position is super unimaginable. At the same time, my mother-in-law was slyly watching my silly look in the reflection of the mirror, and as if accidentally touched me. I flinched and moved a respectful distance away. She suddenly turned to face me with a victorious smile and deliberately hit me below the waist. It sent shivers down my spine. Well, go ahead, because you see how nervous you are. If Victoria gets jealous of you, you'll know. Emily said, such a beautiful and without principles mother-in-law, knowing that I'm completely dependent on her daughter. I flew out of the bathroom like a scalded man and went to the balcony of the hotel room to freshen up and have a smoke. The breeze blew across my face, and I thought about what had happened. She had become my secret dream. However, the thought came immediately. Then I realized that in time Victoria would also become like her mother. Moreover, I was even sure that I would not be disappointed by this study. It was from that moment on that I began to seek a meeting with my mother-in-law to spend as much time with her as possible. Just the thought of wiping her back kept me awake. At the same time, I thought hard about whether I had fallen out of love with my wife. No, my love for Victoria hadn't faded, but men sometimes wanted something more, without allowing secret relationships into their hearts. However, this is fully applicable to women. That's the way the world works. Making secret contact with my mother-in-law was easy and at the same time very painful. Emily, as I began to call her to myself, tormented me. She understood that I was partial to her, and after that incident in the bathroom, I was trying to get closer to her, and she would allow me a little more than I should, or she would reject me. She was happy to play with me, and I was languidly waiting to meet her, losing sleep and appetite. So I decided to change tactics. I just became moderately rough with her, trying to irritate her. I left the calf tenderness aside. Of course, she became nervous as I didn't respond to her flirting. One day, when we were vacationing at their house as a family, I went outside at night to smoke. The night was with a full moon and bright stars, and the air was so delicious that the smoke of a cigarette could not interrupt it. I see my mother-in-law come out onto the porch in a drowsy state without noticing me. I picked her up under my arms and gently pressed her against me. She flinched and tried to pull away, but I held her tight. "What are you doing?" she whispered through her teeth. "I love you," I answered. She froze in my arms and then hugged me back. "I do too," she said. We stood like that for a while, enjoying each other's closeness. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. "I've been waiting unbearably long for you," said my favorite mother-in-law, honey. "Don't be afraid. It's not cheating. It's just your destiny." Then, with a smile, she added, "A good man has my daughter." The sweetness of the night overtook us both. The moon lit up the gazebo like daytime, and I was afraid we would be seen through the window. I felt like a thief who had successfully stolen a certain jewel. Oh, what a good feeling it is to take someone else's jewelry, and such an intimate one at that. I envied myself. Wow, this is such a victory. "Well," Emily whispered in a soft voice, "you made me very happy." I silently agreed. I was still uncomfortable with what had happened to us. As we drank, she, being a little drunk, asked, "What, are you afraid of your wife?" "Yes, I cheated on her. And with whom? With her own mother." After this incident, my mother-in-law began to take the initiative, and we began to meet secretly. But it didn't last long. One day, Victoria caught us. Having learned about the betrayal of her loved ones, she was furious. My wife kicked her own mother out of her house, and I spent 4 days wandering around friends and trying to figure out how to fix everything. Finally, tired of such a life, I bought a huge bouquet of flowers, candy, and went home to ask for forgiveness. To my surprise, Victoria forgave me, and things got better. We began to live together again, and I promised her that I would never cheat again. And since then, I have kept my word. Thank you for listening to this interesting story. Subscribe so you'll always know there's a new life story on the channel. Comment and like. Good luck and good mood. Story 3. The latch in the bathroom broke a long time ago, so long that no one remembers when it happened. The fact that the bathroom in my apartment was a combination bathroom added to the piquancy of the situation. However, since I lived alone, I was not embarrassed by the lack of possibility to close myself when I used the bathroom. I rarely had guests over, and they were not particularly bothered by the lack of a bathroom door either. That all changed, however, when my daughter and her husband moved in temporarily. All 3 of us worked from 10 in the morning until 6 in the evening, so we got up and back from work at about the same time. Naturally, the bathroom was the most popular and sought-after room in our now shared dwelling. Besides the broken latch, there was another problem. I was not used to thinking about whether I had turned off the light in the bathroom after using it. When the 3 of us started living together, this habit of mine played a cruel trick on us. At first, my daughter and son-in-law would wait patiently for me to finish my business in the bathroom. But when they realized that the bathroom was empty for a long time and the light was wasted in it, they became irritated. Now, when they approached the bathroom door, they always knocked or just listened, which looked rather silly. My pleas to Jack to fix the lock didn't work. He didn't like to work with his hands, always waved me away and said he would call a normal master. It was these postponed works that played a cruel joke on him. The 3 of us really liked to bathe, so in addition to the light in the bathroom, we had water flowing in there all the time. We showered every day, or even several times a day, morning and evening. And one evening, when Jack was taking a shower, the latch finally broke and the bathroom door swung open. Jack was just shampooing at that moment, and the soap got in his eyes. He screamed in pain and frightened us, and my daughter and I rushed to his aid. After this incident, Jack finally fixed the latch, and we stopped worrying about someone walking into the bathroom at the most inopportune moment. Once, our family had an awkward situation with the toilet. There was only one bathroom in our apartment, and it became a problem for me. When one of us took a shower, it was uncomfortable for me to go to the bathroom because the shower curtain didn't completely cover the bathroom. I felt restricted in moving around and going to the restroom in my own apartment. However, we found a solution to this problem. My daughter and her husband decided to move their work schedules a half-hour early so they could use the bathroom first thing in the morning and evening. This allowed them to do their water routines without disturbing each other. I was grateful to them for this compromise solution. However, one day an unforeseen situation occurred. On the way home, I started having severe stomach pains and struggled to get to the apartment door. I threw off my shoes as I walked and immediately realized that I needed to get to the bathroom right away. But I was out of luck. My daughter's husband, Jack, had stayed late and was scrubbing himself under the shower while humming some kind of tune. I knocked on the door, and without waiting for an answer, I opened it. To my horror, the curtain was ajar, and I happened to see a man's torso, which was not covered with shampoo foam. My gaze froze on the spot. The thought flashed through my mind like a horse's. I was shocked by what I saw. I said, "Jack, I'm sorry, but I really need to go to the bathroom," and quickly hid behind the curtain. I heard Jack startled and dropped the shampoo. He apologized and said I could go into the bathroom. I was grateful for his understanding and apology. This situation showed us the importance of considering each other's needs and comfort in our family. We found a compromise solution so that each of us could use the bathroom without inconvenience. Now we try to coordinate our schedules to avoid similar situations. It is important to remember that unforeseen situations always arise in a family, but it is important to maintain mutual understanding and willingness to compromise. This helps us to overcome difficulties and maintain harmony in family life. Sorry I took so long. These words, spoken by my son-in-law, had become habitual for me. Every time I came home and tried to use the bathroom, he invariably delayed his water procedures indefinitely. "That's okay," I replied, though a mixture of irritation and embarrassment was simmering in my soul. Holding a conversation with him through the door was stupid and embarrassing. After doing my business and washing my hands, I walked out of the bathroom without turning around. I hoped that maybe this would make Jack hurry up and fix the latch, but it was no use. The situation was repeated the next day. Again, I waited patiently for Jack to finish his water routine. This time, I involuntarily thought about him. Jack was very good-looking. Tall, slender, with a muscular body and dark hair. I envied my daughter, but when I knocked on the bathroom door again, I didn't think about her at all. Jack didn't answer me, and when I slipped inside, he was just soaping his head, so his eyes were tightly squeezed shut. That gave me an extra minute to admire. When the man began to rinse the shampoo off his head, I hid behind the curtain and coughed delicately. Jack was startled again and swearing, embarrassed. "Jack, you better fix the latch," I said, though I was beginning to enjoy admiring him every day. My son-in-law again promised to deal with the matter as soon as possible, but predictably forgot about it. Every day when I returned home, I hoped to catch him bathing again, but Jack began to come home early and simply washed faster. But a week later, the opposite happened. "Mom, I'm sorry. I really have to go," I suddenly heard from behind the curtain. I froze in indecision. On one hand, I didn't want to wait for Jack to finish washing again, but on the other hand, I couldn't ignore his request. "Okay, I'll be right out," I finally said. Pulling myself together quickly, I walked out of the bathroom. Jack was standing at the door, covered by a towel. He looked embarrassed and guilty. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to keep you," he said. "That's okay," I replied, though I was actually upset. I walked to my room and lay down on my bed. I couldn't help but think about him. He was so handsome and charming, and I could feel the attraction to him growing in me. Soon, Jack came into my room. He sat down on the edge of the bed and took my hand. "Mom, I want to tell you something," he said. I looked into his eyes and saw sincerity and pain in them. "I know it's wrong, but I can't help it," he continued. "I love you." I froze with surprise. I had never realized that Jack could have such feelings for me. "But you're married to my daughter," I said finally. "I know, and I don't want to hurt her," he replied. "But I can't hide my feelings anymore." I didn't know what to say. I was confused and scared. "I'm not forcing you to answer me now," Jack said, "but I hope that someday you can love me the way I love you." He got up and left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I lay on the bed for a long time, unable to sleep. I thought about him, about his words, about my feelings for him. I realized that I couldn't just ignore his confession. Almost losing my balance and falling on my heel, I looked around in fright. My son-in-law was standing behind the curtain, peeing in front of the toilet. But the curtain was short, and there was a large, uncovered space around the edges. The man could definitely see me as he walked into the bathroom. I immediately wrapped my arms around myself, as if he could still see me. But Jack, having done his business, went outside without turning around. Having washed and put on makeup, I again thought about what my son-in-law could have time to see. And as a woman, I began to worry about whether he liked what he saw. I think he did, because I was still in good shape, and middle-aged men often looked at me. But it had been a long time since any of them had seen me, unlike my own son-in-law. A few days passed, during which I began to feel strangely nervous and excited before going into the shower. And when I was naked in the bathroom, I tried to look as composed as possible every second, as if I expected Jack to burst through the door without knocking. But it didn't happen. By the law of meanness, it happened when I wasn't quite ready to show myself to a man. I had already turned off the water and was wiping my feet with the curtain. The man knocked briefly, but, without waiting for my answer, opened the door immediately. "Good evening, my favorite mother-in-law. You look beautiful." At that, Jack brazenly and unashamedly looked over and smiled. I did not even have time to cover myself, and the man, having washed his hands, turned around again and, winking at me, went outside. I was left standing there, red with shame and pleasurable excitement. My heart was pounding frantically with the realization that I was naked again, and secondly, apparently, he liked what he saw. 3 days later, on Friday, a short working day, I decided to take a longer soak under the jets of the shower. But, as it turned out, Jack came home an hour early, too. However, during another meeting in the bathroom, he behaved quite differently. He once again openly admired me, washed his hands, and began pulling off his shirt. "What are you doing?" I was naively indignant. "I want to take a shower," he replied succinctly. I was speechless, really, if I wanted to stop the man, but I could hardly do it. Half a minute later, he climbed into the tub with me. I'll be honest, I love men like that, cocky, confident, and knowing what they want to get from a woman. I completely lost my head and started to help him soap up. Looking ahead, I will say that I have not had such a wonderful adventure as I had that time. The next day, I washed without pulling the curtain, not thinking about the fact that I could pour water on the bathroom floor. I was waiting for my son-in-law and hoped that he would decide to repeat that wonderful event. And the man did not disappoint me. Going into the bathroom, he sharply pulled off his t-shirt and said, "I talked to my wife. She shifted her work schedule an hour ahead, and now every day will come later. We'll have a whole hour of free time." Get likes, subscribe to the channel, and comment. Thank you. Good luck, everybody. Story 4. Maria, returning home, had mixed feelings. On the one hand, she was happy that she was able to celebrate her colleague's birthday and spend time with friends. On the other hand, she was a little worried that her son had been alone for so long. She realized that he was an adult and could take care of himself, but she still felt a little uneasy. When she got to the door, she heard someone inside. She opened the door and saw her son sitting on the couch watching TV. He looked up and smiled at her. "Hi, Mom," he said. "I'm so glad you're back. I was getting worried." "I'm sorry I was late," Maria replied. "We were a little late." "It's okay," the son said. "I understand." Maria walked over to her son and hugged him. She was so happy to see him that tears came to her eyes. "It's good to see you too," said the son. They sat on the couch and talked about their day. Maria told her son about her job, and he told her about his school. They laughed and joked, and Maria felt happy. After dinner, Maria put her son to bed. She kissed him on his forehead and wished him good night. Then she went to her room and lay down in bed. She closed her eyes and started thinking about her son. She was so grateful to have him. He was her meaning of life, her joy. Maria fell asleep with a smile on her face. She knew that tomorrow would be a new day, and she would be by her son's side again. Maria felt alone. Initially, she had little time to establish a romantic relationship. Then, as her son David grew older, she began to worry about how he would accept her new partner. By the time David was an adult, Maria gradually became accustomed to her loneliness. However, the fear of relationships still lurked in her heart. She never thought about it much, but subconsciously she realized that she feared repeating past mistakes. In any case, she had been alone for years now and had made peace with it. "David, I'm home." Maria put her purse on the table in the hallway and started to take off her boots. The birthday party had gone very well. No one had had too much alcohol, of course, but everyone had loosened up a bit and had fun coming home. Maria very rarely drank, only on special occasions, and even then very little. "Looks like the holiday was a success," David smiled, leaning his shoulder against the wall. By the way, Michael stopped by to see me. Is it okay if he stays with us? Sure, no problem, Maria replied. Michael was David's best friend and a regular guest at their apartment. His mother was a close friend of Maria's, so Michael often slept over. The guys often spent long evenings, forgetting about time. They kept a popular blog on the internet, shooting videos on various topics. Maria was happy to see David finding suitable friends. She often watched him and Michael laughing, discussing their projects and having fun. Perhaps this was their way of expressing themselves and being in the world, and Maria supported them in this. She watched as David and Michael grew their blog, attracting more and more subscribers. They had become popular online because of their originality and talent in creating interesting content. Maria was proud of her son and his friend, seeing them achieve success. Along with the development of the blog, Maria had a new idea. She decided to join David and Michael's project, offering her own ideas and experiences. She started making videos, talking about her interests, her experience raising her son, and the life lessons she learned along the way. Maria became a popular figure on the blog, attracting attention for her wisdom and sincerity. Her videos garnered many views, and many viewers found inspiration and encouragement in them. Maria was happy that her experiences and words could help others. A new relationship and a new blogging role gave Maria a new life. She no longer felt alone because she was part of something bigger. Her fears and doubts gradually disappeared, replaced by confidence and joy. In this way, Maria found new meaning in her life by transcending her fears and opening herself to new possibilities. She realized that loneliness does not always mean loneliness in the heart, and that courage and openness can lead to unexpected and beautiful changes. Michael lived in another part of town, and getting home late at night was quite a challenge. Tonight was not over. It carried a pleasant continuation. At the first hour of the morning, Maria turned off the television. She put the remote control on the bedside table, turned to the wall, and covered herself with a thin plaid almost head to toe. When Maria was almost asleep, she heard the doorknob turn. She raised her head and saw in the darkness of the night someone's silhouette, who stepped into her room and slowly closed the door behind him. "Maria, are you asleep?" A barely audible whisper broke the silence. Maria sighed heavily. For unknown reasons, it bothered her a lot when this guy addressed her as you. He himself didn't dare to switch to you, and Maria had never asked him to, as she liked his politeness and show of respect. The guy wasn't a timid sort of guy, but he couldn't address an older woman as you, much less the mother of his best friend. "No, I'm not." Maria leaned back and waited for her overnight guest. Michael very quietly walked over to her bed and leaned over her slightly. "Come on, come here." The woman threw the comforter aside a little and drew her legs up so the boy could fit there. Michael carefully climbed onto the bed and hovered over the woman, almost pressing his body against her. Maria twitched her arm and covered herself and Michael with the plaid, as if she wanted to hide from prying eyes. She wrapped her arms around her boyfriend and wanted to pull him against her when she tasted a passionate kiss. Her eyes closed, and she felt the man's hand began to slide down her body with a confident movement. "What took you so long?" The woman could not see her overnight guest, but she could feel his breath. David decided to watch a movie. At least he fell asleep before finishing the movie. I turned it off and came straight here. Michael was almost out of breath. There was one thing about David. He was a very deep sleeper. If he fell asleep, it was problematic to wake him up until he woke up. It was not the first time when the guy looked into the fire with a woman, and they had fun under the plate. And this time, Maria quickly found something to do with the guy. Maria looked into the eyes of her young guest and saw delight. Michael, however, was jubilant as soon as he saw the beautiful woman in front of him. If she woke up the one who was sleeping in the next room, it could be irreparable. The chance was slim, but it was there. The creaking of the old bed became more distinct. He opened his eyes a little and looked at her. "It's time for you to go." Maria didn't want him to leave her so soon, but it was necessary. "Just a couple more minutes." The guy spoke in a monotone, looking into the beautiful woman's eyes. "Okay?" Maria let out a sigh of relief. She herself wanted him to be with her for at least a couple more minutes. The woman had taken the risk, but she so didn't want him to leave. and it had all started by accident. Andre had been in love with Maria since childhood. His mother, Sarah, was her best friend, which allowed him to meet Michael and fall in love with his mother, creating for himself an image of the perfect woman, seeing Maria almost every day. This sometimes happens when a young boy falls in love with his tutor, his teacher at school, or his best friend's mother. Almost always this crush passes as he grows up, but it leaves its marks. A childhood crush has passed, but as it should, it has left its roots. Having fallen in love with the mother of his friend, Michael created for himself an image of an ideal woman, and although he did not notice it, but all his girls were like Maria, not tall, slender, with long dark hair and a small bust. All petite and sophisticated, a little modest, but insanely beautiful. Michael began to forget about Maria, which gave him a chance to calm down a little. But you can't fool yourself. It is impossible to lie when looking in the mirror. One day, David forgot to send Michael the video clips they were working on and went to his grandmother for the weekend. The guys called, and David suggested that Michael come over to his house. Maria was not at all thrilled that Michael would come over and be in her apartment without her son present. Maria was able to drown out her feelings and cool down, but the fact that Michael would now be coming all alone created some awkwardness. But then she pushed those thoughts away. Well, what could happen? He will come to my son's room, do his business, and leave her apartment. Except that neither Maria nor Michael had anticipated that this very day, this very minute, a faucet would burst in the kitchen. Sometimes in a stressful situation, you can get confused. Instead of shutting off the water, you start to fight the elements manually, which, by the way, and did Maria. A cold shower quickly perked Michael up, and he remembered that the water was shut off in the bathroom. Retching from the kitchen, he ran into the bathroom and turned the valve. When he came back in, he found a wet woman upside down in there, staring at the faucet incomprehensibly. The guy had completely forgotten where he was and what had happened before. He pulled off his wet t-shirt to squeeze the water out of it. He looked at Maria. Her entire house dress was soaked through. It clung to her skinny body. Maria, seeing Michael's embarrassment, had a fit of embarrassment and tried to leave the kitchen, but froze in one place. Love struck both of them. That's how they had it the first time. From that fateful breakdown in the kitchen, a new turn in their lives began. Every day they were more and more attracted to each other, but all their meetings were fleeting. Sometimes they managed to spend the whole night together when David went to his grandmother's house. On such evenings, it was possible not to hold back, but to relax. Maria and Michael especially appreciated such evenings, for they allowed them to be alone to fall asleep in the arms of their loved one. The shared secret was so sweet that it wasn't the least bit uncomfortable. Subscribe, so you will immediately know that there is a new interesting story that will stir your thoughts. Comment like. Thank you, everybody. Good luck.